just try and get this thing working. I keep breaking. Let me just check my YouTube. I'm still having, man, it's still so many little dumb things to worry about, like,
I know.
I don't even want to go into, like, it's just so, God, I'm frustrated. Oh, no, that looks good. I see your face on the YouTube.
Nice. Kinda. I'm a chunkster.
You can't tell from there. Man, I don't know if you saw, if you watch my history a couple years back, I was round as a bowling ball, almost 300 pounds. Really? And between August and December of 2015, I went from 270 to 170. So that was August, September, wow. November, October, December. So yeah, 4 or 5 months. So you can do it. It put me in the hospital right away. So that also wasn't good, but that's okay. You can do it. Let me turn off this AC. Then maybe Candy will be here. I think she's teaching today, so we'll see if I can get her on. That would be cool, actually. I know she sits in our chat and doesn't say much, but she's one of the teachers here. Okay, yeah. So let me start it up. So I think this is dropping in a pipeline audio number 42, and frequent guest Phil Zio is here, and
you're already at 42.
Yeah, so it's the meaning of life and everything.
I'm not that frequent if you're at 42, and last time I was on was like, what, 3, 7, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure, but that's crazy because this is almost a year.
I know.
So for you guys who don't know, for one thing, Phil is smarter than more than 6 billion of you because he's signed up for our AIX DSP affiliate link. So he gets mailbox money. I don't know if he's gotten it yet, but he's signed up to make mailbox money, which is the best kind of, if you've been in audio for a long time, that's the only kind of money you want. You watch these publishers and producers going, oh yeah, you know what I had to do for work today? I had to go out to the mailbox and pick up a check. That's what an affiliate link is like. And so if you're not on our affiliate link program yet, get on there. And if you have something like Phil does, where people actually watch you on YouTube, that's a good way to make mailbox money. And yeah, Phil, please tell everybody where they can go to watch your mixing series on YouTube.
Well, I have a couple of different things on YouTube. I'm actually trying to get some more review content as well because, I like free plugins. And if a couple thousand people watch my video, then most companies deem that as worth it. So yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll guarantee you 1,000 to 3,000 views in the next couple weeks, and you should be, giving me free stuff. But you can find me on YouTube at Phil Zio. That's the one. I'm actually on YouTube as Phil Zio.
Oh, hey, let's check that. Actually, let's check something real quick, because for the last couple of weeks, for some reason, you and Josh, it was showing like you guys were, your last one was 3 weeks ago. Let me check here. So I go to Phil Zio.
I have one that's 1 week ago now.
Okay, yeah, I see a 1 week. Okay, so this is updating. Okay, never mind. For some reason, it seemed like it wasn't updating. But okay, so the Phil Zio.
My content is sporadic.
And what do you do on that channel?
I do anything people want me to do, and I also do some relaxed streams that get, my streams tend to get like 50 or so views, 50 plus. But like my other content, like I did a review of Limiter number 6, that free plugin. I did that 9 months ago, and it's got 1,500 views. But I did what the heck, man? Why is it so? Oh, right. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of unlisted content from mix fixes I've done and album mixing streams that I've done for like actual clients of mine. People who wanted to be involved in the process. As I'm sure you're aware, that's always a fun time. And I have like just a dozen videos of me streaming completely unlisted, some with only 1 or 3 views, from when some of them were all in the same room, and some of them had like a breakout room where they wanted to listen on other speakers, so they had like half the band in another room and all that stuff. Oh, cool. And they were all like at their house, and there was one multi-site one where there was every member of the band was watching it in a different location except for 2 people who were in the same room. And I had some fun with that one. Each one was like an hour and a half to 3 hours long, and it was ridiculous, man. I made next to no money on that because I was still trying to roll out the technology. I'm sure you know how how it be when it comes to streaming stuff from your DAW
I'm an
and
early
trying to
adopter.
communicate with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did this over a year ago, and at the time, before the album came out, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try this. I'll charge it like $10 an hour just in case something goes wrong. I've got my money's worth. I can throw some of that at the problem to get the kinks out, and I'll be mixing it anyway, doing the part I was getting paid for, basically, while I was making a little bit of a change on the side. And it ended up going so well for them that they decided to keep me for hours and hours and hours, and I ended up pretty much wasting a lot of time doing the old, can you make the snare sound more whatever I'm thinking in my head stuff? And I was like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into?
Yep. And then
Because
when
now
he
they're
moves a
breathing
foot
over
in the
my back
room,
while I mix.
yeah. And then when the guy moves a foot over in the room, he's like, "Oh no, that's how you want it to snare." And I was like, "I didn't touch anything yet."
That exact thing happened. I was cranking away at knobs on the transient designers and stuff. And I was like, "What do you want from me?" And then I heard it over the phone, because I was on a phone call with them for one of them. The guy was like, "Hold on a second, let me go grab my headphones." And the moment he took 2 steps, he was like, "Oh, that's the perfect snare sound." And I was like, I didn't change anything.
Yeah, but don't say it. Don't say it ever.
Oh no. And that made me really sad. I was like, I can't believe I just spent 30 minutes tweaking a drum sound to this guy, and him stepping like 2 feet to the right changed everything for him.
Man.
I was just so angry.
Yeah, for
but yeah, I do that.
Sorry. For people who've been around Reaper for 4 billion years, we used to have this thing called Reaper Radio, and Justin had made it was a Shoutcast server plugin. You put it on your master, and it would stream Reaper to Shoutcast, and so that's how we'd also have people like bands listen to you. But man, that's just great fun, because one guy's in his car, one guy's listening on his phone, and one guy's in front of. Nobody's in front of studio speakers, but they're all in something they think they know, and they all want different things. Too much bass, too little bass. Like, oh man, this is why bands had producers back in the day.
You know what? I would love to tell a story about a bassist, but at this point, hasn't everybody heard stories about bassists? Like, is there anything under the sun that's new when it comes to bassist stories? Really?
I don't know. Well, there'd be a new one would be if bands weren't always looking for bassists.
Oh, dude, that's so true. I was talking to somebody today, and he was like, "So, do you play guitar?" I was like, "Yeah, I do play guitar, but to tell you the truth, I'm mostly a bassist." And he was like, "That's a really good call on your part, because guitarists are a dime a dozen. Everybody needs a bassist." I was like, "Yeah, at least a good bassist."
We had Waylon Jennings in one time over at my old studio at the Vintage, and I guess he had grown up in Phoenix, and the Gin Blossoms were there doing a recording of their own, and they just loved hearing his stories, so they're listening to him, and he's telling us, man, you don't know what it's like back in my day, back when I was growing up, man, you couldn't find a bass player to save your life, and everybody there's looking around like, and you think that's changed? like that's some alternate reality? No, that's how it still is, man.
It's just the way it is, man. Like, people think they are guitarists, right? They can pick up a bass and it'll be totally fine. People don't know that there's a feel to playing bass, which is kind of why a lot of bass players are dumb, because we mostly only understand feelings. But like, you gotta have it. You gotta have it. And if you don't have it, watch a video of, like, I don't know, if you're really into virtuosos, watch a video of Victor Wooten playing bass, because that dude knows when to transition into a killer solo, knows when to slap, knows when to do anything that complements the song. He's one of those guys who I can honestly say I looked up to as a player. So he's great, right? A lot of guitarists turn to bass players basically make the mistake of root note, just root note over and over again. Or they play that kind of in-between thing where, like, you realize they kind of really want to hit the power chord, and they're just kind of like, do 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 do. Oh no, do 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 do. Like, they don't really know how to play in a good way because they're guitarists. They have a totally different rhythmic style than bassists play usually do.
It's funny, around here, a lot of guys make the transition between ukulele and bass, and they're like, oh, it still has 4 strings. And you're like, no, but they're totally different, but they end up being good bass players. Like, I had some stuff on the stream earlier this week of this guy. He played drums and he plays bass. They flew him in from California, but he grew up here, and he was just jamming along. I'm like, man, that was a killer bass part. And that was, it's more what they call Hawaiian, but kind of the faster type. And I was just tripping out because I'm like, he's not really making any mistakes. He's not doing super technical anything, but it's all it almost sounds like its own melody, but it's always holding down this drum beat that he had also played. It's pretty interesting. And then now here we have all those the U basses, which they look like ukuleles, but they got 4 rubber bass strings on them, and those things end up sounding pretty good. Yeah, those whatchamacallit, Rondo is selling good ones, those like electric ones for cheap. And that's actually really popular over here. They don't buy them from here. They buy them from Rondo.
I actually almost got one of those for like $40 one time because I was going to play what are they called? An unplugged show. It was an acoustic set. And I kind of really wanted to jump in on the acoustic bass because it was a band that I was in, and we actually ended up getting a replacement bassist because I wanted to be the front man, and it's kind of hard to be a front man when you're playing bass. I mean, Tom Araya does it, but
yeah, I was gonna say.
But I'm not really into doing that so much. Like, if I'm gonna play a bass, I'm mostly just gonna do backup vocals. I'm not gonna be like a lead singer. But when I do lead sing, I want to be able to get full body into it and not have to worry about playing an instrument too. So we had a bassist, and he ended up having an acoustic bass, and I was like, yeah, but I kind of had an excuse to buy a U bass, and that would have been fun. But I never did. I should have.
I should buy one. Just a handy thing to have around the studio. A little itty bitty bass. They sound good. They record good. Way better than they should.
Yeah. I mean, ukuleles tend to suck on recording.
Oh, it's hard.
Not going to lie. It is very difficult. And I didn't realize how difficult it was until I had to do it. And at which point it was too late.
Yeah. It's like somebody takes the plinkiest instrument known to man and sticks it in a mic really loud. That's what ukuleles usually sound like.
Yeah. That's why I realized if you listen to, like, say, any of the hip singing people, like Ingrid Michaelson and those types, they tend to have a very not loud in the mix ukulele.
Yeah.
And I realized why that is. You can hear it. It's pretty distinct. But it's like, oh, who was that? It was like really, really early, either Bob Dylan or Tom Petty, where the mix was just so heavily skewed towards the vocal that the guitars practically disappeared whenever he sang. And I was like, all right, so I get what they're doing here. You're covering something up. And it might have just been the recording quality.
Oh, the other thing people need to see your channel for is your exploring Cambridge multi-track. What do you call that? What's the name of that series? That's what people need to watch. Hey, say that again? Sorry.
Laid back mixing. Exploring Cambridge MT. It's one of the two. Like, I use them interchangeably. It just depends on which side of the hyphen they're on. I think I've recently gotten into the habit of only changing the middle thing. So now it's like Exploring Cambridge MT, then the artist name, song name, then hyphen, laid back mixing.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's the structure now. I've got it. It's a series.
That's what I always tell people when they're like, oh man, I want to take 5 minutes and learn how to do what you took 30 years to learn. So how can I do that? It's like, oh, go watch Phil. And so when they watch, it's like, but he just spent half an hour doing one thing to one instrument. I'm like, yeah, there you go. Now you're going to understand.
But that's the thing. I focus so much on like the kick drum and the snare that after that, everything else only takes like 25 minutes the majority of the time. Because I'm like, all right, I'm satisfied with the kick and the snare. And those are the two main elements of all of my mixes. So I'm just going to, let's move on. Everything else is just complementary. So there are times when my mixing series are under an hour.
Oh, man. So the reason Well, really wanted to have you on because last week I was talking about your experiences, and I don't know, if you anybody ever wondered, like there was a book, who was it? It's called The Impossible Faith, I think. What was it? Forget who it was, but it was about the rise of how religions could spread super fast in the old world, and then I know Richard Carrier wrote a rebuttal called "Not the Impossible Faith" and explained why it happened. And how did
that was like 12 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And Reaper spread, right around that time, spread instantly fast. And I think one of the reasons for it was that the tech support was immediate. There wasn't actually an official Reaper tech support, but I would drive around the country and show people stuff. And anytime anybody asked, if there's a problem, Justin would fix it. And sometimes you could watch him fixing it as he was fixing it, which is incredible. So the tech support was always instant, immediate, and the customers, if they were customers because it was honorware, the customers never got the feeling that they couldn't approach, that the developers weren't one of them, that the developers were somewhere far away. And so I've always tried to keep that, especially with the new company and stuff. And a lot of the biggest part of tech support that we had, it ended up being our community. They weren't officially the tech support either, but they were. They did a lot of the work. In fact, if Reaper's manual was written by a user, not a Reaper team member or whatever, the community takes care of everything. And that's, a lot of us came from forums where we kind of did that, but the Reaper forums are something else. I think most people would say there's something pretty unique. It's pretty incredible the level of help you get on it. And we've had shows before where we talk about how what kind of unhelpful things you can do in forums and tech support and stuff. But for the most part, the community is really important. And but the saddest part about this story that's going to be told today is that, again, the guy doing all of the heavy lifting wasn't even the tech support for anybody. He's just helping. And the way you usually get your help rewarded, or not usually, but very, very often, the way you get your help rewarded is for you to get the guy all the way up the ladder, where all he has to do is take the last step. And right then, just at that very second, he jumps all the way down the ladder, kicking you in the head on the way down, and then goes, "Hey, how do I climb this ladder?" And like, dude, I just explained the whole damn thing to you. In fact, you even had your explanation in your own question. So what in the hell is going on? So what's the guy's name? Derringer Rappaport or Rappaport Derringer? Let's hear this tale.
Rappaport Derringer.
This is some
hilarious
stuff.
First of all, I want to preface this by saying I have a lot of amazing students. I actually I know it's a little unprofessional, was just messaging one of them who was asking me a question about MIDI and articulations and transporting things between Pro Tools and Logic and maintaining, articulation and all the copied MIDI. And I was like, yeah, I have some answers for that. And he came up with his own solution before I even got there. And I was like, well, that's really cool that, people can think. And even if they don't know an answer, they might be able to come to an answer on their own. And I've got people who are, let's say, some of the best students and are like 70 years old. This one guy that I'm talking to right now is 18. Like, age is literally no indicator of how good a student is going to be or how good somebody can learn, because, no lie, every single age range I have taught how to do either recording or mixing or, miscellaneous studio things. But some people, and I want to say it's a mental health thing, are so afraid, are so anxious, are so averse to learning and taking risks that they will literally destroy what they thought was good by taking terrible advice, and then try to convince other people it's good advice, and then keep asking the same question over and over again, trying to get good advice, and then saying, well, lol, I don't trust myself to understand the difference between good and bad advice, but I'm also never going to try anything myself. And it's just the most frustrating thing, right? Now, this one guy, Rappaport Derringer, as I'm calling him, he recently revealed to me that he has some issues going on that have stemmed from childhood. And I broke out the old psychology textbooks and talked to him about his issues, and I was like, yeah, I get it, it's fear of failure. But now at this point, he's not a student, he is a patient. And I'm not a professional. I'm not equipped to handle something like that. But I have exercises to help him get to this place where I am, and I can say without a doubt that if I don't know how to do something, I'll just keep hacking away at it until I figure out a way, because I don't care if I'm doing the wrong thing in like the context of a creative work like a mix. I'm just gonna figure it out. It's not a big deal. If I do the wrong thing, so what? I'll change it later. There's no right and wrong in mixing.
Yeah, that's what Undo's for anyway.
Yeah.
And Reaper backup projects.
Yeah, I was going to say, or Reaper, they go a step further, and you have that entire history selection that shows you your last move. And if it's not something you can do with Undo, you can just go 3 steps back. I can't tell you how many times I've gone 5 or 10 steps back and realized I was tapping random buttons and I made a horrible judgment call about one thing and all this other stuff. And I'm like, Undo cannot save me. And the Reaper history has saved me.
Yep.
But that's the thing. It's all about experimentation and creativity and learning to get your own confidence, right? When you first go into a big studio or a small studio or whatever size studio, it doesn't matter. When you first see this gear in front of you or you see the DAW laid out in front of you, you're not an expert. No one is. Everybody's coming to it with their own baggage, with their own history, with their own hang-ups and psychological problems. Everybody has a different starting point, but we all kind of help each other out, We want to see people able to learn, but you can't teach people how to learn as easily as you can teach them concepts once they know how to learn. And unfortunately, some people will abuse the term learn or teach, and they will try to say get you to mix for them and make a mix template for you, and then give them this mix template which they just copy and paste all their stuff into and pretend like one size fits all 100% of the time, and then make just off the top of the head, they might make a half a decibel change to a bass line and then say, does this version sound better than the last version? And they might spam a user group for a certain tool 20 or 30 times before people are like, all right, man, your goodwill's running out. I can't hear a difference. And you just keep spamming your tracks without asking any real questions. Was that a little too specific?
I don't think so.
Oh, good. So yeah, when people continually abuse other people's goodwill and try to get free stuff out of them, it's not an opportunity to learn at that point. You're just making other people do the work. Those people are doing things they already know how to do. Nobody's learning anything. And you're not really getting anything out of it because you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because your next song, you might, if you ever change the key of your music, you might experience weirdness and you would notice that something doesn't just drop in and fit perfectly. But, every mix is its own unique creative opportunity. And if you don't explore it and address it as such or respect it for what it is, you're not going to have the kind of quality you think you will have. And honestly, I'd rather have 3 bad mixes in a row that at least had something unique about them, so that that final mix or that 4th mix or 5th mix, I'll know what parts I liked and I'll be able to synthesize them in a good way. And I've had that happen. I've had customers who were very, very particular. And at the end of the day, I don't begrudge them for having a very particular ideal that they want to set out for, because it creates something new and unique and interesting. Really, this is why we work in a customer service industry. But when I work retail and somebody asks me to give them stuff for free so that they can see how renting works, that's just trying to feed me poop and tell me it's chocolate.
Yeah, we had a special kind of troll. I don't know if we still have very many of them, but they were they're pretty smart. They I know it's different than your Derringer guy, but they would pull the Tom Sawyer trick. They would be like, that thing about the oh man, this painting this fence is so awesomely fun, man. I wish I had more brushes so you could try it too, And so they would get people to mix their stuff by saying, man, I really suck at this, but you're so good at this. Can you show me what it's doing? But they're not showing them anything. They just want to mix the whole song. And yeah, people get pretty ugly about that one. So get out of here. Go mix your own song.
Not only that, but there are so many people who just want tracks to learn on legitimately. And those people who are pulling the wool over other people's eyes and like trying to, steal basically is what they're doing. They're trying to steal without people realizing they're stealing. Those people could also be donating their tracks to like Cambridge MT, right? They could be using those tracks as a resource for good instead of an impetus for evil. What causes people to do that?
People rather have somebody else. I mean, we have there's parasites everywhere. That's really what it is, right?
But then, if you think about it this way, and I've always thought about it this way, in my philosophy, I've told people that I'm a hedonist because I only really care about myself and like my progeny. And therefore, I want to do so much good in the world that it would be almost impossible for my kids to not have a good life. Like I try to take it in that weird direction where I'm making excuses for absurd independence. But in reality, I'm just trying to provide for society, And golly gee, if you do something for others, you will almost always see a return of some kind. Am I wrong? Like, people will talk to you. If you gave somebody your tracks, right, and said, hey, I just want to give out these tracks and people can share their mixes and I can talk to them after the fact. If I really like your mix, I might want to buy it off you, even if it's inexpensive. And you can talk to people. You can work those things out, right? But if you just want to give it away as a resource, that's cool too. It doesn't have to be totally one-sided. You're doing a good thing. You might hear a lot of people's mixes and then you might, hit them up and say, hey, what are your rates? I really like that mix you did of my song. Like, it can be more even-keeled and benefit both parties involved. It doesn't have to be highway robbery or a con job every time you want somebody to do something for you.
They say rising tide lifts all boats,
Exactly. Although I heard it as a rising tide lifts all ships, so I think we know who's in the wrong here.
Is there a difference between a boat and a ship?
You know what? I am almost positive somebody has made this argument at some point.
I'm trying to think, because you could say ship for a spaceship, I guess, rocket ship. But
okay, here we go. There's an article on Marine Insight called 7 Differences Between a Ship and a Boat.
Oh, no! What do they got?
Okay. And it was last updated on October 4th, 2019. That's in the last 2 months. Wow. So this is a hotly debated topic.
Yeah, here I am in the middle of the Pacific, where surrounded by boats of every kind and possibly ships as well. So.
You're definitely gonna know. The difference number 1. The most important aspect that's considered while stating the difference between a ship and a boat is the size. It is said the best way to differentiate between a ship and a boat is to remember a ship can carry a boat, but a boat cannot carry a ship. So, ships are bigger than boats. Oh, wow. Okay. So there's actually some pretty in-depth differences, including areas of operation, navigation, and technology that are used. So boats are simple, whereas ships tend to have a lot more time-sensitive and navigational technology. And wow, thus makes the crew pretty huge because they're so big and they have so much more tech. So ships are massive in comparison in every way, including propulsion.
But a
Nice.
boat today from the yacht club, a brand new boat at the yacht club today would be piles and miles of in advance of the best warships of 50 years ago. So I wonder how that one works out.
Oh,
This
come on,
sounds
man.
very subjective.
You can't tell me that you wouldn't want a computer the size of ENIAC to help navigate your ship, or
Well,
to,
so
I don't know,
I think you could do it with
man
a
upwards.
phone today.
That's true.
What's another difference they got?
Well, it looks like the propulsion is one of the biggest differences. So
Ah,
if you look at it, a boat can be powered by sails, motor, human force, etc., whereas a ship has dedicated engines. So if it has a dedicated engine, then it's way more likely to be a ship.
okay. All these are very, very. I don't know what else they got.
Oh, apparently submersibles are categorically considered boats in spite of the fact that ships and submersibles contain almost all the same technology.
Weird.
But that's a holdover from an archaic time when a submersible vessel would be hoisted on ships until they were required to be used. So they were considered boats because they were put on ships.
Ah,
Wow. Okay. So now that we have that out of the way,
yeah, I'm still confused.
semantic arguments.
Yeah, but you know
I love it.
this is how audio stuff is supposed to work. You gotta figure something out. You're gonna look through it. You know, you gotta figure out what compare it. You know, like this is a great exercise in Venn diagrams for one thing. So you can put circles inside other circles and see where they overlap and stuff. And this is how you learn things. You don't learn things because some guy said this is 15 warmer units better than this one, which is colder and more sterile. You know, that's not how you learn junk in audio.
Okay, you need to make a plugin that measures things in warmer units
Yeah,
and sterile units. Like,
Euphoniism and whatever else. You gotta get all the regular terms. This one's more
yeah.
forward, and this one's more subtle.
Oh yeah, dude, definitely. And there's got to be. Okay, I actually took a college class. I'm sure you've heard this one on converting. What was it? The kinds of terms that a musician would use to describe a signal, and then made a chart of the different words that they would use, like warmer, softer, fatter, like all those just subjective terms, and then converting them into actual quantitative measurements. So
Oh
it was
man,
a qualitative versus quantitative chart, and we had to figure those things out, and we had to use common terms that we heard frequently. So we ended up learning that a lot of those qualitative versus quantitative statements totally change based on the demographic that uses them, on the region you hear them in, all that stuff. So, like, I'm from Philly, and we use the term John a lot. So, one of the things that I wrote was, yo, make that John snappier, because that's something I've heard some of my clients say. Now, what would you do if somebody said, yo, make that John snappier?
I'd say what do you recording your guitar in the bathroom? What are you talking about? You know, I don't even know what they'd be talking about. But you know,
Exactly.
like, different genres too. You know, like that's this thing. Oh man, that's harsh as hell. And like, oh man, that guitar sounds smooth. You're like, wow, it's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
guitar.
And a lot of it's context sensitive. So, I mean, mixing is, as we all know, about contrast. It's about the interplay between the elements and the difference between the areas with and without those elements. So, a lot of contrast really impacts the way people hear things. So, if you have stupid bright drums and stupid bright bass tone and stupid bright vocals, and the cymbals are just so much harshness in the high end, and then a person hears like a really scooped, normal sounding guitar tone for like metal or something, but in comparison, it's not as horrifically harsh and bright as the rest of the mix.
Yeah.
They might be like, man, how do I get a tone that warm and that punchy and fat?
Yep.
Like, because it's contrast. It really is. everything else is just horrible. And then that's the one thing that is pretty much closer to okay. But if you heard that guitar tone against, say, I don't know, like Rust in Pieces drums, you might be like, oh, what is that horrible tinny mess of guitar tone? Like, it would be horrible. Because contrast.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, a lot of times, or the worst part is when you're working on something that actually fits in the mix, but you're with the band, and you're like, oh shit, you know what? I have to solo this thing for a second. And when you solo it, which the thing that sounds great in the mix sounds horrible, and there's the band freaking out on you. You're like, oh, everybody turn around while I do this. You know, go. It's pizza time. Yeah. I got to hit solo. That one's always terrifying to me. It's almost like you want to have a separate signal path in your DAW that when you hit solo, it sends something weird to them and not you. You know, I don't know how you would do that, but
you know what's funny about that is I only do fader mixes in front of the band. So like faders up. And then when they're gone, I'll start soloing things and getting stuff to sound the way I want it to. Because otherwise they're going to just... It's not even that it's a problem how they want to hear things. It's more like they don't know how to get the sound they want without also stepping over everything else. Yeah. They don't have the ear for nuance and like the frequency puzzle thing that I like to talk about. They don't necessarily get that. And it's not their job to. They're musicians. Their job is to write good music. I'm all about that. I want their music to sound the best it can and really make their ideas come to life and give them the best quality that they're wanting, not necessarily the best quality that I think I would like, but the best thing that they want. And when you do that, you have to interpret a lot of different mixed messages. I've had a lot of people say, yo, I want more low end in the guitars and less in the bass. And I'm like, okay, that's doable. I mean, I don't know if you know how that's going to sound, but I'll try it for you because at least you understand there's interplay there and there's things that would fight if I didn't take it out of something else, you know? So I've had pretty good clients overall, and I wouldn't complain about any of them. That's not true. I would complain about one, but you know, but for the most part, I like mixing with people, but I'm not going to do it the way I do on a stream. Because when I'm doing it on a stream, I'm just doing it to unwind and mix things the way I like. So I solo everything. I really take the time to contemplate how I want that thing to fill out the mix and where I want it to sit. You know, focus on the spectral aspects of things a little bit more. Whereas when I'm with them, I just kind of want to focus on the energy of it more. I'll do a lot of saturation stuff. I'll do a lot of compression. I'll do a lot of that kind of thing in front of them. But when it comes to EQing, I'll do that on my own time because I know what's going to work best, and they can offer their take on it in the revision notes.
Yeah, all those little fiddly things, it is scary to... When you have people around, you just want to... For me, I always want to just keep moving. Like, oh man, if they're here, we need to keep the things moving and don't... Because if you let musicians, for the most part, focus on a small detail... They'll never let go of it. It'll wreck them for the rest of their lives. They'll never be able to get past some small detail that doesn't even matter for a part that was going to end up being muted anyway. But that small detail that once they hear it, they can't unhear it, and you got to deal with that. So you just keep moving and making. Yeah. For me, I make the big broad strokes when there's people.
Exactly, especially because musicians get really sentimental about the way they heard something, like revision 2 or whatever. Like just an arbitrary time they heard it and it was a good day and their girlfriend was like, you know what, it's your birthday, I'll go for it this time. Or like their mom sent them a casserole and it was their favorite kind of casserole. And they threw on that demo mix that they heard like 3.5 weeks ago, just on a whim. And then they're like, man, I miss the good old days when it sounded like that snare and not that other snare that I don't like. You know, and it's kind of fickle that way.
Yeah, mixing is rough.
I've had people that I will absolutely not name, but I've taken huge issue with, and they have caused some of their own problems, you know, because it's not just the mix thing that I'm about to talk about, but, you know, sometimes bands just have really bad problems and like dynamics with the people in them.
Yeah.
And that definitely shows itself. And eventually the fan base gets a hold of like that idea, you know, they grasp onto it and they're like, oh no, something is really wrong with this band that I like. But there was this one band that had a demo mix. The producer said, please do not show anybody this demo mix. Do not share it with your friends. Don't even show it to the band because I am so embarrassed by how this mix turned out that I would much rather it burn, but I know you need it because the tracks that the band sent me were a little bit off time or a little bit out of order, you know? And I had to arrange things so that they were actually on time since they didn't quite line up at the start. They didn't start at 0, basically. So if something came in a minute and a half late in the song, it would have started at 0, you know? It was one of those things. And so I did my best and I was like, look, I just need something, anything to help me put this song together. Because right now it's just a whole bunch of pieces that start at 0 and none of them actually start at 0.
Wow.
I need help. And the producer was like, all right, I'll send you this just because I want to help you out. On the stipulation, no one ever hears it. Unfortunately, the lead vocalist also had a copy of it. And it ended up on Bandcamp.
Wow.
And my mix of the song, the first revision had some issues. It was lacking in low end. Great. It sounded awesome in a car. It sounded awesome in my speakers, in my headphones. It sounded awesome everywhere. And I tuned the vocals in a really natural way, even though the vocals sounded horrible at first, right?
Yeah.
So I did everything right in the situation. And the band, bless their hearts, as they say in the Midwest, they didn't want to take down the version of the demo that they had on Bandcamp in spite of the repeated begging of the producer. And that was the version they went with.
Yeah, well, as long as they paid you, I guess. But who knows? That sucks. And I'm sure that
They
producer's
were like,
not
we
happy.
appreciate it, but we like the original version better. And I'm like, how? And they were like, well, you know, for whatever reason, your version has some timing issues. And I'm like, my version, all of your parts are audible. And they're like, yeah, we don't like that. I was like, oh, that explains that.
Oh man, that's that's one of those things where when you got a new band, you know you've done your job. If the band is pretty bad, but the next time you see them after you started recording them, they tell you, hey, we had a show last Friday and everybody said that's back in the day, the Blink 182s and all that, and they would all they would while you're recording, they're going, oh, is that you're just from them recording? They know, they're able to figure out so much better what it is that they're supposed to do, even as a live band, which is, they think it always goes the other way. Oh, we're a great live band. No, you're not. You just never heard yourself. You're horrible.
I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me. Like, I have heard, not just from other people, because, you hear stories about that all the time. I'm pretty sure Bring Me the Horizon said, yeah, it wasn't until our 4th album that we were like, wait, that's what you're playing? Because they literally, all of their albums before that were done in live rooms where they just played everything live and then overdubbed the guitar part. So the only person doing overdubs was the guitarist, right? And the vocalist was doing all his stuff like live too in a different room. And it was just really noisy. And you can hear it. There's a very human element to those albums. And they were like, yeah, once we got into the studio this one time and they gave us in-ear monitors and we took it like from the beginning. So we had our composer compose synth. They just got really creative for an album, right? Like they explored sonic territory. And ever since then, I think their albums have been increasing in quality significantly.
Yeah.
Because
How long it's taken, you pick.
Yeah, that sounds lucky.
it is. Granted, there is one person like a 22-minute song because
So,
22
planning on
minutes
cutting
long.
it up later.
Yep. And his pickup broke in the middle of the recording session. At which point I was like, do you want to redo the parts? And he's like, no, I'll just do new parts after that. So then we tracked it using a pretty decent condenser mic that I had. And he was like, why can't I hear myself like breathing and stuff? And I'm like, because you were breathing really loudly into the microphone. You were like hunched over your guitar and going like, I was like, hey, are you kidding me? You know that microphone's catching sound, right? That's that thing that's there for. It was a nightmare.
Yeah,
The music was pretty fun though.
Lots of times when I'm doing 12 strings, I used to do it just by putting MS mics up crazy close, and I'd make them wear a painter's mask, like,
I should have done that. I hadn't even thought of it at the time.
oh man, it works real good unless they're, sometimes the super hardcore stoners, they can't stand the smell of their own breath. They're like breathing out some whatever they had earlier, and they're just dying.
Oh well, that's probably a sign of like maybe your breath smells bad, dude.
Yeah, I'd get crap about it every once in a while, but that usually works pretty good. Because you're looking down at your guitar, and so of course even if you kept your mouth closed, your nose is trying to breathe into it, and it's a hard not to make a lot of, especially with the 12, especially the way I'd mic them, I'd have it so close that it's hard not to make crazy noises.
One thing that I like to do is I'll mic it with a small diaphragm condenser, a very directional one, and then I'll use more of like a room mic, but I'll put it really low. So like if the guitar is here and the microphone's right here, pointing directly into the hole, the other mic will be down here, almost pointing at their crotch. And then I'll have a pop filter above it, and that does help a little bit, just filtering some of the scrapiness. And then I don't have to have it too far back in the room in case somebody starts doing something stupid. The only thing that doesn't help with is people that tap their feet while recording acoustic.
Yeah, I don't know what you're supposed to do about that. That's what the high pass filter's for.
Until you're in a pretty reflective room because they like the sound of the room and they start tapping their feet.
Oh,
and in the background of the guitar, you hear.
Oh, man.
Which is awful. I like recording in weird environments, but there's pros and cons.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is when they're going to, just because that happens, they're going to get creative. They're like, hey, man, this sounds really good with my foot doing this thing. So let's, can you put a mic on my foot?
You know what? If they did that, I would be like, heck yeah, I can. It's just another fun thing to add to the mix. This is another element. I like that.
Yeah.
We had one guy who did a cajon that way. He was like, I really like using the cajon the way it's normally supposed to be, but I also like putting it on its side and stepping on it because that gives it a really cool tone. I'm like, go for it, dude. Seriously, I'll reposition the mic. I don't care.
See, I never really ran into too many of those until coming here, and man, people they got some crazy tricks with those things, and it's you can really get enough of a drum sound out of them that you're not missing anything at the smaller clubs, especially.
Yeah, I had one cajon that I didn't have the cajon. That same client who liked flipping it up on its side and then doing the stepping on it, dude was a really great drummer on top of being a great cajon player, which is weird because I don't think they always translate very well. You have good cajon players and then you have good drummers usually, and most of them don't do both. But this guy was great at everything. He was great at auxiliary percussion. He was great with the cajon. He was great with his drums. No matter what size it was. It could be a massive double bass kit with like 8 toms, or it could be like a little mixer kit, like a kick, snare, hi-hat, and then a ride cymbal. And no matter what you put him behind, he was golden. We used that cajon for an entire song in like an 808 style pop kind of thing, where I just mic'd up the back of the cajon for the sub frequencies, and we made that thing boom, like thicker than any kick drum I've ever mic'd up. Honestly, it was massive. I was amazed.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the sounds they can get out of those things. Yeah, we got the guys around here. They do the like the tennis ball beater, and they put the pedal on backwards, and they use that as a kick. So they got their kick and their snare. That works pretty cool. Surprising. And,
I bet it would.
Man, it's so much smaller, too, than a drum set.
I know. Really portable. You throw it in a box, in a case, you strap it onto your back, and you're gone.
Yeah.
Finally, the drummer can pack up quicker than the guitarist.
Oh, man, that's... Oh, yeah, especially now with the guitar players that all gone retro and got a $5 million single pedals, where they could just have some pedal board that did the whole thing. And oh man, I'm gonna get slammed for all the analog gear junkies out there. But as much as you hate those Line 6 pedal boards, I'm pretty sure that one of those things can do just about everything your pedals do, and set up in half the time, a tenth of the time, 100th of the time, way less noise, and only need a couple pedals to do it.
I've said that to somebody once. I was like, look, man, this cheap Boss or this expensive Helix sounds better than your whole stack.
Oh, any day.
And they're like, no way, man, you can really hear the cab move. And I'm like, yeah, me too. And I move the slider that says cab movement, and I increase it a little bit. And they're like,
man,
that's not fair. That's cheating. I'm like, no, I'm not blowing my ears out. So I'm winning.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's one of the ones you really get nailed on. Like I don't even want to. That's a whole. That's 400 shows, man. I know I allude to that stuff all the time, but that is, boy, that's a whole nother thing. In fact, yeah, you know what? I think we got. I think we've been on for like an hour. I'm gonna end this here, but we should totally get back to. Yeah, we got to get a couple. We got to get a true believer on here and have them explain, because every once in a while they're not just completely nuts. They actually have some insights on why they want to torture themselves like that. So I got to get we got to get one on to tell us.
Absolutely happy to have anybody on. Well, I mean, it's not my show; it's your show. But anybody on who's willing to actually discuss why they believe the things they believe, even if they're wrong. I just want to know the reasoning. Like, you could say, I just like the feeling of this Line 6 Spider, like Rob does. And I'll be like, okay, that's fine. It's your thing. I can pick a Line 6 Spider out of a lineup, and I hate it. Yeah. I do not like that amp. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me. If you can make it sit good in a mix and you can make it make the sound you want, that's all that really matters. Yeah. Just don't force me to listen to it soloed, and I'll be okay.
Yeah, that's the funny thing too. Is like, as much fun as Glenn Fricker makes of those things. If I had to have one, I mean, compared to my Gorilla back in the day or my Rode amp or whatever, like if I had to make an album using just Line 6 amps, I guarantee that it ain't gonna be the Line 6 amp that's gonna be the thing that holds it all up. I'll get it started. When I first met, the very first time I ever heard a Line 6, or his pod back then, was we were doing a Rob Halford album, and he brought this thing in, and he goes, our lawyer or our rep or something wants us to endorse this thing. And it was this kidney bean looking thing, and we slapped it on the table where everybody was eating, and so he plugged into it and plugged into the studio monitors, and we're like, whoa. That's because there's been tons of attempts at speaker emulation and amplifier emulation and stuff, and most of it was pretty gross. But the pod, it was weird because the guy's like, hey, no matter how hard I hit it, it's making the same sound. And we're like, oh yeah, that's kind of typical of transistor stuff, right? He goes, yeah, but it was making the right sound on the recording that they wanted, but it was a trippy thing, man. I was like, well, this is the future. And I was already long sold on, technology was coming. I used to play way back in the 90s. I played in a Digitech thingy, and I played it out a PA speaker using its speaker simulator. So I was already committed, but that
That's
still
the Wild
sounded
West,
horrible
though.
back then.
Yeah, that sounded bad because the speaker emulations they used were like a low pass and a high pass filter and some really
horrible.
strangely placed notches, which really makes you wonder. Like I've heard people use those Digitech amps from back in the day, run them direct out and use their own IRs, and they sounded decent. I was really shocked. I was like, so you're telling me these things got crapped on for so long, but literally if you just ran it through a power amp into a cab, it would be virtually no different than like the Valve Marshalls. Really. Like I was shocked, right? So the technology wasn't that bad. They were just doing the wrong thing with some of it.
And I had I didn't really like the MP1, but I had an ADA MP2. And the speaker simulator was okay, and that's what most people use. But when I finally actually plugged it into a 412 cabinet, I'm like, oh, this thing's killer,
Yeah.
So,
it's surprising what you can do with those things.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to take stuff apart and model it and do fun stuff, because you learn a lot about those things instead of just true believing whatever you've been told.
All right, well, let's get to that's how I kind of started getting back in the manufacturer's view was dealing with the pathetic state of iOS based guitar processors. So, but we need to talk about all this guitar junk. But I'm gonna get off this thing now. Thank you for being on and giving me some content and for being smarter than 6 billion however many people that aren't on our affiliate program right now. And we got plenty of plugins for your review on your thousands of streams, and make a whole $5 of mailbox money off of it.
Man, I used those plugins on a stream like day of. I literally got the license key from you. I was like, where is it? And you were like, it's in your email. I was like, help. And once I got them registered, I was like, all right, now I'm going to use them on a stream. And I did. And I was like, I don't think I can make music the same without these anymore. Because I tried a really basic mix again, and I went back to it and I was like, it doesn't sound as good as it did with the other things. Which is the point, right?
Yeah. And I'm a little bit worried, if Mike hears this, freak out, but the multiband gate is something that I know, a lot of us need, and I've wanted for a long time. The other ones are pretty much me trying to get rid of having to use calculators for the most part, because it's kind of more of an esoteric thing, and it may not be that important to some people. So, we'll see how the other two do. But for me, it's like, this is such a huge time saver, and that's really what I'm looking for is time savers. Note
EQ has changed my life.
Awesome.
Like, right? I went from doing really stupidly complex chaining setups where I do all these sends and then invert polarities, or I would take a parallel and cut one frequency and pull it down and blend it in with the original. So like all this stupid stuff, right? And then I did sidechain compression, all these things, trying to figure out how to do exactly what that thing did. Then I got Sheps, right? And I was like, all right, I can make a thin notch or a wide notch on the Sheps de-esser, and I can kind of do this thing that I want to do. And it got me close enough. That's why it was an indispensable tool for me for a long time. Now, I literally just throw Note EQ on a track, and it sounds better than it ever has before, because I can finally do these things just instantly. I can go to the note I want to kill, bring it down, and affect how much thickness it is. Whereas with the Sheps de-esser, I can't do that.
Oh, wow.
It is 2 bands you can choose. You can choose the thick boy, or you can choose the thin boy, and it doesn't show you the note. It only shows you the frequency, which I then have to go back and I have to reference. And anything I can do to get rid of that saves me time and money, honestly.
Yeah, I want to get rid of all calculators if we have to. Back in the day, before we had Tempo Sync Aware plugins, like, man, what a convenience that was when the first Tempo Sync delay came out, and you're like, yay!
Yes. Although, get this, reverbs, which could also benefit from a tempo sync, do not usually have them by default. So I still have my reference printouts for those.
Wow. and reverbs just in general, like I'm still, I don't know, reverb is one of those holy grails. Like, we were waiting for so long to get a harmonizer. We got our harmonizers finally, pretty much.
Revoice
but
sounds really
reverbs-
cool too, by the way. I like using it as a harmonizer.
But I'm still not sure we have our reverbs. I got that Eventide 4000 or whatever that is sitting in the other room. And eventually I'm gonna plug it back in and see if I'm just fooling myself on what I think that reverbs used to sound. Maybe I'm being crazy, but
I don't honestly. I feel like whenever you mention that unit, I'm like, this sounds a lot like the guys who swear by the 480.
Yeah.
And I pull up a 480 emulation, and I always convince them it's a 480.
Oh wow.
Like, it's never. I know that sounds. Oh, aren't you high and mighty? But no, I mean,
No,
literally,
I believe it.
our emulation is good.
I believe that there's something super hard about some of these reverbs. I don't know what it is, but I see this again. I don't want to be Mr. Confirmation bias. I need to test this stuff and see if I'm just making it up, because I have the hardest time, and you know me, like I'm always taking on these guys that believe they hear magical nonsense because they painted part of their guitar green rather than painting that part yellow or whatever. But man, I swear I'm not. Yeah, that's a whole nother one. We should do a whole show on comparing some reverbs and stuff. But
the secret to reverb is a low pass filter. If you want like that 80s or 90s sound, it's all just a low pass filter. The resonance on those drums that they would send through the reverbs was just so crazy high. Like, they had peaks all up in like 3K and 6K and 8K, right? And then they would send it through these reverbs that are already low passed to like 8K, or they'd be 8-bit reverbs, so you're not getting much dynamic range out of them. And then
I wonder if that's a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it was the source going through the reverb. At least in the instances where I've compared the two. Once I've done that exact thing, like made them that really scooped but bottom heavy and top heavy snare sound, and then sent that to a reverb and then low passed the reverb at like 8K, which it can work, or even lower sometimes, I've gotten a way more authentic 80s sound. And it loses some of that hard edge that is really prevalent in the digital stuff. I know Valhalla Vintage Verb has an 80s mode, but to really make it work 80s, you have to crank the low pass down.
Yeah, I'll try it some more. I'll see what I can get compared to that Eventide, and like, because I'm the last person in the world who wants to. I mean, you see me all the time. Like you see me get kicked out of Facebook groups because I say, hey, this is at least as good as the hardware, if not better. So I'm not.
And people get so mad at you.
Oh man, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not Amish. I'm not whatever. I'm definitely an early adopter when it comes to technology. But so this is one case where I'm like, man, I swear I can't get the reverb sound I want. But you know what? Maybe I just can't get the reverb sound I want. It's got nothing to do with the reverbs. It's just me. So
it's honestly, sometimes I've noticed with digital reverbs, I have to EQ them. And a lot of that's just because the components aren't breaking down and filtering things badly.
That could be too.
Like I expect to hear.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to end this one now. I know I keep saying that, but I really got to end this now. Now
I'm going to end this one now.
The school is filling up with people, and I've got to get moving. But thank you for being on here.
Thank you. Glad we dropped actual knowledge at the end of the video.
Yeah, and everybody go to Phil's YouTube channel and watch his mixing series. And
why, thank you.
Yeah, because then you can know what it is that we do, and it's not something you can learn in 5 minutes. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna do this real quick. Yeah, good luck.
I want to
with
do
that.
more tutorials and stuff so bad, but copyright, man. I'm terrified of copyright on YouTube now. I've gotten a couple of copyright strikes for stuff that I have legally been allowed to use, no less. And I've appealed them and I've won, but if too many of those happen at once, my channel goes down.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, you remember what I was going through when they were getting me for my own voice. So, yeah, be careful with that stuff.
I am. I'm trying. All right. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yep,
Hit me up next time you want to go on.
All right. Yeah, I'll see you. I'll let you know.
See ya.
All right, bye. Okay.